Now, now first question is anal canal, isn't it? So where do we find anal canal? See, this is rectum, and the continuity of rectum we are
Narrow.
finding anal canal. Now, anal canal has come as an essay question, isn't it? So the anal canal is situated below the level of pelvic diaphragm. Okay, that means what are the muscles forming pelvic diaphragm? Levator ani. Below the level of levator ani muscle, we will see anal canal. Now, if you remember, we had ischiorectal fossa, right? See, one picture, yeah. See, this is one ischiorectal fossa, in fact, okay, where you are finding lot of fat. This is the lumen of anal canal. The other side also yellow color you can draw. That means this is the passage of anus. So that means between two ischiorectal fossae, we will find anal canal. Okay, beta, that is the thing what we are told here. Okay, so it is present between the right and left ischioanal fossae or ischiorectal fossae, which are basically filled with fat and which allow free expansion of fecal matter, isn't it? Then, basically, when you look into the large intestine, interior of large intestine will show folds, right? Mucosal folds, but such mucosal folds are actually like sacculations or tinea. What you see from outside, what we see in large intestine, they are not seen in the anal canal. Now coming to the length of anal canal, see how where is it situated? First of all, see this is the pelvic cavity. Okay, this is pubic symphysis, urinary bladder. In case of females, we have uterus, cervix, vagina. Okay, and then we have rectum, anal canal, behind which we have sacrum and coccyx bone. This is the layout of structures in female pelvis. Okay, pubic symphysis, urinary bladder, uterus, cervix, vagina, vulva, rectum, anal canal, sacrum, coccyx. So that means this is per rectal examination. That means you are passing the finger through anal orifice and entering into the rectum and checking for the softening of cervix, whether the baby's head can present at the vulva or not. That is per anal examination, which you will learn again in obstetrics. Okay. So in case of males also we do per anal and per rectal examination to check for the enlargement of prostate gland, which I told you previously. Now let us come to the layout of structures. Now see here, in case of males, this is pubic symphysis, behind which we have urinary bladder. Neck of the urinary bladder in males, we have prostate gland, rectum, anal canal. Now, through rectal examination, you are able to palpate prostate gland in males. Okay. So this picture I gave you to make out like what are the relations of anal canal anteriorly and posteriorly. In females, it is more clear. Anteriorly, it is related to the cervix and vagina. Posteriorly, it is related to this coccyx. Okay, and there will be anococcygeal raphe also. Now that is the like layout, like what is the length? It is 3.8 centimeters, and the continuation of rectum is anus. So there will be anorectal junction where you will see forward convexity will be there. So this picture has been shown to us in this rectum topic. Let us see here better. See, this is the anterior curvature of rectum and this is the curvature of anal canal. That means at the junction of rectum and anal canal, there is a sharp bend or sharp fold we have. Okay, and this is opening out side to the exterior. Now, now when you look into the interior of the anal canal, so it has been divided into overall it is 3.8 centimeters in length. So upper 15 mm, middle 15 mm and lower 8 mm. So upper 15 mm will show mucosal folds inside which are called as anal valves. In between anal valves, whatever area is there, you call it as anal column. Now, joining all these anal valves, you find as though it looks like a line. You call it as pectinate line. Okay. So, now this is middle one third area. Okay. So, where you will not find any mucosal fold and here also there is one white line. Okay, white line of Hilton. Okay, below which you will find true skin, so many sebaceous glands, hair and all. Okay, that is below white line. So this white line actually indicates mucocutaneous junction. This is all mucus layer and this is skin, and together you call it as mucocutaneous junction. Okay, beta. So that is what is described in the interior of anal canal. Okay, relations I have told you very well with the help of these pictures. Just read and take the help of diagrams. Then you will easily understand the relations. Interior you will be able to write by looking at this picture. Okay, so middle part is transition zone. See, upper part is actually lined by columnar epithelium. Okay, and middle part will have actually columnar epithelium, and lower part of the epithelium gradually becomes like true skin, because I told you we have mucocutaneous junction at white line of Hilton. Okay, so stratified squamous epithelium we generally find in the skin, and below white line of Hilton we have all true skin, and this is all covered by true skin, hair, sebaceous glands which always keep it oily. Okay, sweat glands, isn't it? That's what. Then coming to the musculature of anal canal. So when you just look into the musculature, see here what are the various muscles we have. See, like any other part of the GIT, here in the anal canal also we have four layers. What are those? From inside to outside, we have mucosa, submucosa, muscular layer, and then serosa. Isn't it? Then, so serosa layer, in case if it has any peritoneal covering, you call it as serous layer. Otherwise, we use the word adventitia. Isn't it? Now coming to mucus layer, as it is in the upper part columnar cells, in the middle part upper part columnar, and lower part stratified squamous, uh, keratinized epithelium. Outside true skin, stratified squamous keratinized type of epithelium. That is mucus part. That means the most interior part, below which we have the submucous part, where we have mucus gland. Coming to the muscular layer, in the muscular layer, what are the various muscles we have? This is inner circular layer. Okay, outside to which we have longitudinal muscle coat. Okay, then outside to this longitudinal muscle coat, we have one voluntary sphincter. When we are ready for the process of defecation, this muscle will relax. You call it as external anal sphincter. Okay, this external anal sphincter has three parts. Like it has upper part, then it has middle part, excuse me, this is lower part. Okay, when you just consider this longitudinal muscle cord, it comes down like this and it ramifies, that is nothing but branches, to form elastic septa, fibroelastic septa, which get inserted in true skin. That's the reason if you look at anal orifice, it will be contracted as though it is pouting out like a mouth, and it will have so many folds all around like a sun. How is that possible? Because this longitudinal muscle is just fanning out to form fibromuscular septa and it gets attached to true skin. Okay, so this is all about the musculature of anal canal. Okay, just read this. By taking help of picture you will definitely understand. Okay, then so external anal sphincter, there is a muscle just above this external anal sphincter. You call it as puborectalis. That means it is actually coming from the point of pubic symphysis and it is moving towards rectum. Below which you will see the formation of external anal sphincter. Okay. Then now, surgical spaces, one space is quite big, which we already know, on either side of rectum, anal canal. In order to allow its free expansion, we have ischiorectal space or the ischioanal space. Around the anal orifice, you have one more space, this area where I am scrolling, which you can also see the labeling. This is actually the perianal space, or the, which is surrounded by perianal fascia, where we have so many blood vessels. Okay, cutaneous veins. Okay, then just below the mucus layer, can you see here so many bluish veins, especially in middle one third? You have submucosal and internal rectal venous plexus. That's the reason in case of constipation, and like in case of constipation, this mucosa is exposed to very much high tension, because of which this mucous membrane is ruptured and the underlying blood vessels will start bleeding, which is called as piles and hemorrhoids. Okay, bleeding through the anal orifice during the process of defecation due to prolonged constipation. Okay, where the fecal matter becomes hard, so that you are finding in the that space is actually the submucosal space. Okay, where we have internal rectal venous plexus. Okay, now what are the blood vessels which are supplying anal canal? We have superior rectal artery and inferior rectal artery. Okay, and these are the veins which we just saw, these veins, right? Internal rectal venous plexus, they form actually the like venous draining channels. Okay, then now basically these venous plexuses, they are arranged in different, when you just compare with the hour hand of the clock, this venous plexus is more concentrated at 11 o'clock, 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock position. Okay, now the importance of this venous plexus is whenever there is constipation which will lead to boils and hemorrhoids, these areas you will see basically the blood vessels are ruptured. We will generally consider it clinically whether it has ruptured at 11 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 7 o'clock. If it is 11 o'clock, you call it as right anterior primary pile, 3 o'clock left lateral primary pile, 7 o'clock right posterior primary pile. Okay, beta. So that's what is actually, though it is telling you about the venous network at different hour hands of the clock, but still it is used under clinical anatomy also to describe piles and hemorrhoids. Okay. Now coming to lymphatic drainage, nearby lymph nodes are internal iliac nodes. Finally, they will drain into inguinal group of lymph nodes, superficial inguinal. Then nerve supply above the pectinate line, that anal valves and column, I told you one line. Above that, you will see it is autonomic nerve. So whenever autonomic nerves are there, please remember there will not be any pain, even if there is cut, rupture, bleeding, whatever happens, whether it is cancer, whatever. So it is pain insensitive. Okay, both sympathetic and parasympathetic pain sensations are anal like carried by both of them. Then below pectinate line, it is somatic. Actually, below pectinate line, we have true somatic nerves which are pain sensitive beta. Then sphincters, they are also supplied by like sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic. They are also pain sensitive, 100%. Okay, supplied by inferior rectal nerve. So above pectinate line, it is pain insensitive beta, and below pectinate line, it is pain sensitive. Okay, that's how we have internal piles and external piles. External piles are pain sensitive, whereas internal piles are not pain sensitive, no pain sensation. Though so much bleeding will be there because that is supplied by these autonomic nerves. Okay. External piles are piles below pectinate line. I told you they are very painful because they are supplied by somatic nerves. Whereas internal piles are above pectinate line. There you have autonomic nerve supply, comparatively less pain sensitive or no pain sensitive beta. That you have to remember. Then fissure in ano, in the sense if there are cracks developing in the anal valves, okay, because of severe constipation, then you will see some fissures are formed, okay, which are called as fissure in ano. Okay, so these fissures, cracks may open outside to the skin and it looks very much awkward, of course, and also very much painful. Okay, fistula is a new channel or new passage or new canal which is tracking downwards. See, abnormal epithelial tract connecting two cavities, one cavity with the exterior. That means that anal canal, new passage is developed and it is opening outside through the skin. That is fistula in ano. Okay, so if there is any infection or pus or abscess, you will see such new roots or new canals or new passages will start, and you will see some oozing out of blood, pus, and so many like things. Okay, beta. So that is all about this first answer. then we have common bile duct. I will first finish off abdomen questions. Okay. Tell me something about common bile duct. How is it formed? Tell me. How is the common bile duct formed, Ritika? Oh, nobody wants to speak. Right and left hepatic ducts to form, join to form common hepatic duct. Common hepatic duct will go to form the cystic duct, right? Cystic duct will lead to gallbladder. That means when you start from gallbladder, you will have the cystic duct. The common bile duct is formed by the union of common hepatic duct with cystic duct. Okay. Where is liver chapter? Yes, extraperitoneal. See here, how is it formed? Right and left hepatic ducts will join to form common hepatic duct. From gallbladder, we have cystic duct. So cystic duct and common hepatic duct, both of them will join to form bile duct. Okay, this bile duct will join with pancreatic duct. Both of them will join to form hepatopancreatic ampulla of water. Okay, which opens into the second part of the duodenum. Okay, so now the question is, how is this common hepatic duct formed and its course and relations? Now see here, this common hepatic duct, if you just, yeah, if you just look into this picture, you will see this is the common hepatic duct which is related to first part of the duodenum. You can describe it as supraduodenal, above the duodenum, behind the duodenum, retroduodenal, below the duodenum, infraduodenal. So this common bile duct, finally you will see it opening into the second part of duodenum. Okay, beta, second part of duodenum along with pancreatic duct. Okay, now see common bile. This is our question, bile duct. Now he's asking us its course. I told you it is supraduodenal, retroduodenal, infraduodenal, intraduodenal. That means it is entering into the second part of the duodenum, right? So when you talk about supraduodenal, then you have to talk about relations. Anteriorly liver, posteriorly portal vein and epiploic foramen, and towards the left you have hepatic artery. One thing which is common posteriorly, you will see inferior vena cava, retro and infraduodenal. Okay, and then retroduodenal, obviously retro means it is behind the duodenum. So that's why anteriorly first part of the duodenum, posteriorly inferior vena cava, and towards the left we have gastroduodenal artery. Okay, so infraduodenal, anteriorly you have like a posterior surface of the head of the pancreas. Write this, and posteriorly inferior vena cava. Okay, intraduodenal part, we know it joins with main pancreatic duct to form hepatopancreatic ampulla of water, opens into the second part of the duodenum as major duodenal papilla. Okay, and this bile duct, it has certain sphincters, like the one which is surrounding the main common bile duct, you call it as sphincter cholecystocus. Around the pancreas you have sphincter pancreaticus. Together they form hepatopancreatic ampulla, which is sphincter ampullae. Okay, which opens into the second part of the duodenum, also called as sphincter of ODDI. Okay, so that is about common bile duct. Are you there with me? Nobody is talking?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, beta. Histology of pancreas. What do we see in histology of pancreas, beta? Exocrine part and endocrine part, isn't it? The exocrine part will show acini, okay, and these acini are purely serous acini. See here, this is the picture, histology. All serous acini because they are all concerned with the secretion of pancreatic juice. Isn't it better? In between you will have ducts because this is exocrine part will have main pancreatic duct, isn't it? So intralobular and interlobar ducts finally they will drain into main pancreatic duct. In between the exocrine part, that means between the serous acini, we also find collection of islets of Langerhans, where we have alpha cells, beta cells, and delta cells concerned with the release of glucagon, insulin, and somatostatin respectively. Okay, beta? So this is the histology of pancreas. Now in the kidney, he has come in very much order, you know. First liver, then pancreas, then kidney. Systematically, the questions have been taken from this chapters one by one. So, I'll check if we have information about development here. Okay, it's not given, but if you remember, see, from the cloaca, you have ureteric bud. See, whole of the GAT, whole of the embryology I taught you, we have foregut, midgut, and hindgut. The hindgut part, you will have cloaca. From the cloaca, you will have ureteric bud developing. Okay, that ureteric bud will grow into metanephros. Metanephros is part of mesoderm. Ureteric bud is the part of endoderm because foregut, midgut, hindgut, these are all developed from endoderm. So the ureteric bud grows into metanephros. Ureteric bud branches into so many divisions which actually forms the calyces. That means the collecting system. From the metanephros, you will see the parenchyma of the kidney is developed. Okay, that means kidney has dual development from the cloaca, that is endoderm, ureteric bud. From the metanephros, that is mesoderm, whole kidney is developed. Okay, then the anomalies are, you may have like upper poles may be united, horseshoe kidney, lower poles may be united, pancake kidney. Okay, the whole kidney, like two kidneys may be lying on only one side. There may be only one kidney on one side, unilateral kidney, bilateral kidney. Basically, kidney will be ascending up from the pelvic region, it will move to the lumbar region. Sometimes the kidney will not ascend from the pelvic region above. Then in such conditions, we will have pelvic kidney. Pelvic kidney. So these are the anomalies of kidneys, what we have. Just go through once the embryology textbook. Okay. Then psoas major. Can you tell me the origin insertion, beta? Psoas major. Okay, if not, it's here. This is the development part, beta. You can see. See, this is cloaca, what I was telling. This whole thing is GIT, foregut, midgut, hindgut. From the cloaca, you are finding one bird is developing. This is ureteric bird. And this ureteric bird is growing into metanephros. This is metanephros. Okay, this ureteric bird keeps on branching to form major and minor calyces. That is the collecting system. And the rest of the parenchyma is actually formed from metanephros. Okay, then you have various anomalies of kidneys, that is pancake kidney, horseshoe kidney. Unilateral kidney, polycystic kidney disease, where you will find so many cysts in the kidney. Okay, beta? So that is all. Yeah, this is polycystic kidney. So many cysts we have. Okay. Then what is the next question he gave us? Psoas major. Where do we find psoas major? The posterior abdominal. See, so much in order this person has taken the questions. Posterior abdominal wall, beta. If you remember relations of kidney, the bed of the kidney, posterior relations of the kidney is lying on the muscles. This is psoas major. Okay, that is in the posterior abdominal wall. We have psoas major. Okay, so these are which vertebra? We have lumbar vertebra, isn't it? L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. This is the last rib from the lower border of the last rib. Okay, and also from the transverse processes of the lumbar vertebrae. You will see the origin of this muscle. It joins with the psoas tendon, and both of them they form iliopsoas. Do you remember iliopsoas, which gets inserted into the greater trochanter of the lesser trochanter of the femur? Lesser trochanter of the femur. Okay, so this is psoas major. This is the, just read once, this fusiform muscle which is coming from the anterior borders of transverse processes of all lumbar vertebrae, intervertebral discs. Okay, then tendinous arches extending across the constricted parts of the bodies of lumbar vertebrae. So finally, you will see it combines, it joins the iliacus tendon, both of them they get inserted into the lesser trochanter of femur. Okay, nerve supply, it is supplied by L2, L3, and sometimes L4. These are the spinal nerves. So psoas major along with iliacus, it is powerful flexor of hip. Okay, so it helps us to raise the trunk from recumbent to sitting posture, helps in maintaining stability at hip. Okay, so all these are functions. So anyway, origin insertion only is asked, but also read the nerve supply and action. What is the arterial supply of suprarenal gland? We just passed. What are the blood vessels, beta? We have three set of blood vessels supplying the suprarenal gland, isn't it? Superior, middle, and inferior suprarenal arteries. This see here, blood supply. Superior suprarenal artery, middle suprarenal artery, inferior suprarenal artery. Superior is a branch of inferior phrenic. Middle is a branch directly coming from abdominal aorta. Inferior is a branch coming from renal artery. Okay, this has come for 2 marks. That means it will come for you for 3 marks. Okay. Supports of uterus. This is also for 2 marks. What do you say? Without looking into the book also, you should be able to tell. So many times I taught you, Chavi, Ritika, please be active, interactive. Tell me at least one support. Perineal body. Can you tell me the muscles in the perineal body? 10 muscles. This is perineal body, right? Here in the perineum, this point. We have levator ani, superficial transversus perineae, deep transverse perineae, bulbospongiosus, external anal sphincter. Okay, all are paired except, see, this is all perineal body which gives support. Okay, this is bulbospongiosus, this is superficial transversus perineae, 2 in number. If you remove deep transverse perineae, this is all levator ani. You also have external anal sphincter. Okay, just see once. Then what else do you have as supports? True supports. Pelvic diaphragm. Pelvic diaphragm. Then you also have certain ligaments. What are those? Lateral ligament. Don't remember anything. You are relaxing too much, it shows better, which is not good. You should balance the things. By God's grace, you got so much of free time. 50% you spare for studies, 50% you spare for your entertainment. Balance the things in life. Because if you answer, it will be something like motivation. See here, these are the ligaments what we have. Because this is not the first time we are discussing, no, but so many times I taught you. Okay, this is cervix. Anteriorly you are finding pubocervical ligament, laterally you are finding transverse cervical ligament, from behind you are finding uterosacral ligament. Okay, these are the supports of uterus. Apart from that, we have perineal body and pelvic diaphragm. These are the true supports which hold the uterus in position. Okay, so these are all questions what we have from abdomen. Then let us see what are the questions we had from lower limb. Only one, that is, yeah, only one he gave. Only one 4 marker, that is common peroneal nerve. Anybody remembers how is it formed? Common peroneal nerve. Where does it supply? What are the terminal divisions of sciatic nerve? Ritika? Terminal divisions of sciatic nerve are tibial and common peroneal, isn't it? Tibial nerve and common peroneal nerve. Common peroneal nerve is dividing further into superficial and deep peroneal nerves at the neck of the fibula. That's the reason if fibula is fractured, people will suffer with foot drop, because common peroneal nerve further divides into superficial and deep peroneal nerves. Superficial peroneal nerve supplies lateral compartment of leg. Deep peroneal nerve supplies anterior compartment of leg. Now tell me what are the muscles of, see this is your common peroneal nerve. This is neck of the fibula. This is dividing into superficial peroneal nerve and deep peroneal nerve. Okay, superficial comes to supply lateral compartment of the leg. What are the muscles we have there, beta? Laterally only two muscles, peroneus longus and peroneus brevis. And deep peroneal nerve comes to supply anterior compartment. What are the muscles we have there? Anterior compartment. Tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum longus, extensor hallucis longus, and peroneus tertius. Okay, beta. Now see here. This is our sciatic nerve, which you see behind, back of the thigh. Okay, this sciatic nerve at the back of the knee joint, that is popliteal fossa. You are finding it is dividing into two. One is tibial nerve, which goes and supplies the posterior compartment of the leg, and this is common peroneal nerve. This common peroneal nerve goes and winds around the neck of the fibula. Okay. Here also you can see how sciatic nerve is dividing into two, tibial and common peroneal. Yes, here we are with popliteal artery. You can in fact see here. Yes, course. Course he wrote, that means this is tibial nerve he is talking about. Common peroneal nerve. Diagram is not here, but explanation is here. You should understand. Dorsal division of the ventral rami of L4, L5, S1, S2. Okay, that is course. I told you very nicely. 6.4 and 9.1. Yes, beta. You can see here this one, common peroneal nerve. Okay, this is the posterior aspect of the knee joint, that is popliteal fossa. You are finding one twig is going to short head of biceps from the common peroneal nerve. Okay, and the others, it is going to superior lateral genicular nerve, lateral cutaneous nerve of the calf, then inferior lateral genicular nerve, then we also have sural communicating nerve. Okay, apart from the terminal branches, you have also these branches supplying the respective muscles of this area. Okay, beta, and you can add a point of foot drop if this nerve is getting damaged at the neck of the fibula. Then meiosis. What is meiosis? It's a 2 marks. It's a type of cell division where the chromosome number is halved. Okay. So then you talk about the various phases. We have certain stages, no, leptoteny, zygoteny, pachyteny, diploteny, and diakinesis. Okay, you just give those names. Then classification of bones. These are all 2 markers, beta now. So we have short bones, long short bones. What are the short bones we have? Like the phalangeal bones. There also you have like head will be there, base will be there, shaft will be there. Long bones like humerus, upper end, lower end, and the shaft. Irregular bones like hip bone. Okay. We have certain pneumatic bones, air-filled bones like frontal bone, maxillary air sinus, ethmoidal bone where we have ethmoidal air sinus. Okay. We have sesamoid bone like patella, which is formed in the tendon of quadriceps femoris. We have pisiform bone, which is formed in the tendon of flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay. So this is something like classification: short bones, long bones, irregular bones, pneumatic bones, sesamoid bones. Okay. Turner syndrome. See, there is one chromosome missing here. Instead of two XR XY chromosomes, in this case, you will find only one X chromosome in case of female, and one more X chromosome is missing. That's why you call it as X0. And that female will be presenting with absence of secondary sexual characters. No mammary gland, no axillary hair, no pubic hair, no short stunted growth, web neck, and no menstrual cycles. Okay, so all these are the defects what we see with Turner syndrome. Uh, then we have to go with the last essay question. Bronchopulmonary segments, that too only right lung he is asking you. Okay, then we have to open the other book now. Upper limb and thorax. Can you tell me how many bronchopulmonary segments we have, Ritika?
10.
Yeah, very good, beta. So right lung has how many lobes?
3 lobes.
Very good. Name them.
Uh,
Upper lobe, middle lobe, and lower lobe. Okay, fine, no problem. Can you tell me the branching pattern of tracheobronchial tree? 238. 38.
uh, primary bronchus,
Hmm. Very good.
secondary bronchus,
Yeah, very good.
tertiary bronchus,
Excellent. Primary, secondary, tertiary bronchi. Then we have
bronchioles.
bronchiole, respiratory bronchiole, isn't it? Then,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, alveoli, acini, isn't it, beta?
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes.
that is the branching pattern of the tracheobronchial tree is important because that is the passage through which air is conducted. In the tracheobronchial tree only, you will see the air. This is the airway path, what just Ritika told us. Okay, trachea bifurcating into right and left principal bronchi. Okay, into each lobe, as Ritika told us, the right lung has 3 lobes, like upper lobe, middle lobe, and the lower lobe. In the upper lobe, we have 3 bronchopulmonary segments. In the middle, we have 2, and in the last one, we have 5. So overall, as she said, we have how many? 10 bronchopulmonary segments. Similarly, of course, in the left also, we have 10 bronchopulmonary segments. Okay. These bronchopulmonary segments are something like individual units. One room. This is one room where air is going individually. If any infection is occurring in that room number 1, only remove room number 1. Don't just interfere with room number 2 or any other room number. That means these are 10 rooms individual rooms which are conducting the air till the last